So when you hear the word Iran, what comes to mind? For a lot of us, it's two kind of conflicting images, right? On one hand, you have this incredible land of ancient history and really deep hospitality. But on the other, you've got the nation that's always in the headlines for nuclear tensions and geopolitics. The thing is, both of those are true. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into these two starkly different worlds, the Iran of international policy and the Iran that's experienced every single day by its people.
So first, you've got this perspective, the one from travelers who are actually on the ground. These are people who visit and find a country that feels nothing like what they see on the news. They talk about a place that's safe, super welcoming, just full of warmth. You know, this is the Iran of the people.
And then, bam, you get hit with this. The global narrative sounds completely different. It's a world of military operations, of national security threats. This is the Iran of policy, and it's a huge point of intense international conflict. So how can these two realities possibly exist at the same time? Well, a lot of that disconnect is rooted in a very deliberate U.S. foreign policy strategy.
To really get what's going on, we have to look at the official policy that's been shaping the U.S.-Iran relationship for years now. It's a very specific strategy, and it's known as the maximum pressure campaign. Now, this policy isn't something that just popped up overnight. Sanctions have been a tool in the toolbox since all the way back in 1979. We did have that 2015 nuclear deal, which brought a little bit of relief for a while, but then the U.S. pulled out in 2018, and sanctions were put back in place with this renewed intensity that really defines the situation today.
So what exactly is maximum pressure? Well, it's a strategy that uses incredibly severe economic sanctions to basically cut a country off from the global economy. The whole point is to create enough internal strain to force that country's government to change what it's doing.
And the official goals of the campaign are pretty straightforward. Stop Iran from enriching uranium, make sure they can't develop nuclear weapons, and push back against their military influence in the region. These are, really high-stakes national security objectives.
But here's where it gets really intense. Enforcing this policy goes way beyond just economics. As Frontline has reported, it has involved covert operations, even the assassination of key nuclear scientists. Actions that are designed to cripple the program from the inside. But while the targets are that specific, what does all this pressure actually feel like for the average person in Iran?
All right, so let's shift gears. We're going to pivot from the world of geopolitics and go right to the streets of Isfahan and Tehran. What is the day-to-day reality for the 88 million people who are living under this campaign of maximum pressure?
This quote from a local resident, Abed, I think it just captures the core contradiction perfectly. He says the country feels incredibly safe in his daily life, but it's the total opposite when it comes to the economy. And for so many people, their entire existence is defined by that financial instability. And here's what that instability actually looks like in practice. Just imagine not being able to use a credit card or book a flight online or get access to international banking. Then add on top of that soaring inflation that just wipes out your savings overnight, and this constant nagging stress about what the future holds for you and your family. That is the everyday reality.
And the consequences are absolutely devastating, especially when it comes to healthcare. Now, even though things like medicine are officially exempt from sanctions, the ripple effects of the policy are severe. Research has shown that the price of some essential medicines jumped by as much as 50% almost overnight.
And this reveals a critical breakdown in the whole system. So you might be thinking, wait, I thought humanitarian goods were exempt. Well, they are on paper. But international banks are so scared of the huge penalties for violating sanctions that they often just refuse to process any transactions related to Iran. The result? It's basically a blockade, and it cuts off access to vital medical supplies. So knowing this, knowing the widespread human impact, you have to ask, why? Why is a policy like this pursued? Well, the answer isn't really found in Iran. It's found in the political ideologies that shape how power is used in Washington.
A big piece of this puzzle is an ideological framework you might have heard of called Project 2025. At its core, it's a blueprint for consolidating power within the executive branch by, and these are its own words, deconstructing the administrative state.
Okay, so at the heart of this idea is something called the unitary executive theory. The basic idea is that the president should have direct control over the entire federal government. And that includes agencies like the Department of Justice, which have, traditionally operated with some independence from political influence. This centralization of power is really what enables the swift and aggressive execution of policies like maximum pressure.
And experts like Stanford's David Slansky are warning that this kind of approach breaks with these long-standing norms that were designed to prevent government agencies from being weaponized. It really represents a fundamental shift in how executive power is viewed and how it's used.
So let's bring these two worlds back together. On one side, we have this high-level policy, and it's driven by a very specific political ideology. And on the other side of the world, we have these profound human consequences.
And this, right here, lays the two narratives bare. On one side, you have a policy that's focused on national security threats and military capabilities, and on the other, you have a human story of survival, of ordinary people just trying to navigate a crisis that affects their ability to buy food, find medicine, and even plan for a future.
And that leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. When a foreign policy is designed around this concept of maximum pressure and it's intended to cripple a state, who is it that truly feels that pressure? Who is it that ultimately pays the price for these huge geopolitical strategies?